Casey, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, that's good. Keeping cool.
Yes, trying to. It's quite warm here.
See you, John. Did I see you, John Maxwell there somewhere?
You did.
Yes.
Yeah, here I am.
Yes.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Has Anderson had a talk to you?
He did, yes, yesterday.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's good. No problem. Before Terry takes over the meeting, I had an absolute fantastic interview with Jim and Faye Richards, but unfortunately, due to a technical problem, in other words, a complete stuff-up, we weren't able to present it tonight, but we've got it in mind to present it another night. But Terry will tell you all about it, and Gordon will tell you about it as well.
No. You did all the work on it, Bill. I don't know a lot about it. I know you did a few miles, a few Ks trying to sort it out.
It's such a shame. It's stuff that I had never heard of before, and Jim just opened up. But anyway, we're going to try and recover it. I believe we may be able to recover it.
Okay, how are you, Paul?
Well, Terry.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Hello,
I think I
Elaine.
saw you.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
G'day, Paul.
I think I saw you last night, didn't I, Paul? In another
Yes.
Zoom.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Bill.
Congratulations on Chief Scrutineer, Mr. McPherson. Big promotion.
Oh, when did that happen, Rod? Obviously you were.
Well, I got an email about the change to the sup-reg and different people shuffled around, and you've been nominated.
I'll have to share any financials with Mr. Metcalf.
Yeah, but Greg Chappell's been taken off the original permit, and you're on as the Chief Scrutineer.
Yeah, I was a bit upset at the way that they just deferred all those sub-regs from June to November, and just as if it was the same meeting. I said last night, I said to Ken, I said, what's the go? I said, surely you could change the dates and things on the sub-regs and make it more applicable to the actual event, rather than trying to run it as an event that happened in June, as being transferred to November.
Well, that was brought up at the committee meeting a week ago.
Was it?
Immediately, yeah. That was noted by one of the other delegates, and so obviously I saw that too. Still the 19th date.
I don't think it's the right thing. I mean, if I was the steward at that meeting, I would have objected to. I would have said that should be changed. You can't do that. That's wrong.
That COVID-19 check he's starting to get a bit tough, Paul. We're going to have
So he's actually he has a backup, Rod, because one of the Forge Club guys his actual job is a COVID-19 authorised officer.
Yeah.
So he said if he sees anything, he'll pass it on to Terry.
Yeah.
there's
He'll
two of them.
report me, I think. He'll say I've done the wrong thing.
Terry, if Dan Andrews says at 10 o'clock we can take our masks off outside, what are you going to do?
What won't be applicable? You know Dan Andrews, Rod. It'll be next Sunday night, 12 o'clock,
yeah.
before we can take them off.
11:59, yeah.
You won't be taking them off Sunday morning when he announces that you can do it, or you will be able to do it.
We'll be leaving them on to keep our faces dry anyhow, Terry, so that's
Ken's worried it's going to rain, he says. All right. Firstly, we had a big program lined up for tonight. Bill has been running all over Melbourne trying to put together some stuff for us, and unfortunately his prize interview let him down, but we're still hopeful that we'll be able to retrieve it and show another Zoom meeting, which in actual fact we'll probably only have one more Zoom meeting, because our December meeting will be by Zoom again, and that will probably be the last one for the year, and then we will hopefully be back at the club rooms for the traditional barbecue tea in February. That's my hope anyway. Prior to that though, on the 17th of January, Merv and Jill George are opening their house up as they did earlier this year. And Merv's particularly keen to get a good turn up at it. He's been sending me photos of his garden and said the garden's magnificent. Why can't you come this weekend? But hopefully it'll still be good in January.
What date, Terry?
The 17th, Sunday the 17th of January. So that will be well publicised in the magazine that you will get between now and the December meeting. And let's hope that after that, we can get back to some sort of normal program of events. The one event that is hanging in the air at the moment that I've been trying to get confirmation of is Yarra Glen. Yarra Glen are having trouble, or the AONC that run Yarra Glen are having trouble with the racing club because the racing club are concerned that there'll be too many people at it for them to comply. We don't know what the regulations will be by then anyway, but at the moment, I spoke to Ian Ross at the AONC just last week, and he said it's a bit up in the air at the moment. They desperately want to have it in January. I forget the date, but the usual date in January, but they can't get the confirmation from the Yarra Glen Racing Club who control Yarra Glen. So we'll see what happens with that. MSCA, Rod, do you want to?
Okay, well, we're all ready to go on Sunday. There's a few last-minute panic emails today because it's all online, and Mark Ray has not had enough people do the pre-event paperwork. The majority have, but we're worried about delays, so sending our licences and membership things in. So anyhow, I'm sure it'll be fine, but I did send an email out to our Team Healey members and supporters stressing don't come. You're not, no spectators, one person. Pit crew. The one thing that I must admit, you had a bit of a gripe about the sup regs, the rules still about not backing into your garages, Terry, because someone was stupid enough to stand behind a car backing into a Sandown garage and broke their leg. I don't know what they thought people were going to do. That means that David, Kelly and I have to push our cars in on our own. No, Richard,
you don't have to. I cleared that up last night, Rod. You don't have to push them in on your own.
You know Ken Price pretty well, and he was absolutely adamant that we have to push it. So that's cleared up, is it?
Well, it was discussed last night. I specifically asked Ken, I said, how can two people push a Healey backwards into a garage?
One person, because I'll be...
No, you can have two because you've got a helper.
Yeah, well, we don't have helpers, so I've got David and I are sharing a garage, and we're going to go out together and run Group 1 and come in, and between us we have to push the two cars in. So, and that came up at the meeting last Monday of last week, and it was, and Price said, you must push them in, that's a CAMS rule. So anyway.
So you better do a bit more exercise.
Maybe a length of bungee cord.
You can always call on a scrutineer rod to be 1.5 metres away at the other end of the car for you. So
well, we've always cheated because we've put it in reverse and four guys put their hand on the bonnet and we've just backed it in. But no four guys. But the other news is, so look, we'll be fine. It's an interesting day and see how we go. At least, and a bit unfortunate about waiting since March to run again, and it looks like it's going to be showery with thunderstorms. So never mind, first world problem. The other thing is that we've been notified that the VHRR have decided at this stage to run historic Sandown, historic Phillip Island, March the 6th and 7th. I don't know whether they're over this. And the details will come, but at the moment they're planning a 2-day race meeting, Saturday and Sunday, with optional practice on the Friday instead of a 3-day race meeting. And they're trying to work out roughly $500 for the 2 days, like the garage, and practice for $200 on the Friday. So, and so a lot of details to come. So at least they've decided to, at this stage, take a chance. So that'll be good.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions or anything they'd like to ask? Otherwise, we've got a bit of a mixed bag tonight. We've got 3 separate presentations that I hope everyone will find interesting. Gordon, we're going to start with, can you mute everyone, Gordon? That'll be the best thing you can do first. We were searching for different things. I found this a few months ago and I said to Gordon, this will probably be more interesting to the women than the men, which is a change. So this is a place that I visited last year in Queensland, and this is a bit of a story about it. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Paronella Park. It's an amazing place. It's out of Cairns, south of Cairns, and it was Well, it'll be self-explanatory because I'll tell you the story about it. It was built by a chap in the 1930s. He particularly bought this block of land because it had a waterfall on it, and he had a vision that he would like to build a entertainment venue, I suppose you'd have to call it, where he could have functions and things. He built his own hydroelectric scheme on the waterfall, and they've had weddings and all sorts of things. It's gone through a few owners in the time since it was first built, and it's a lot of it actually is looking a little bit run down, but it attracts a lot of visitors up there, and I hope you enjoy it. Over to you, Gordon. The only reason he chose that spot was because of the waterfall, and everything else he built. It's if you ever get up to that neck of the woods, I thoroughly recommend you go and have a look at it, because it's that clip doesn't really do it justice. It's just mind-boggling in my opinion, and it's a very popular tourist attraction.
Harry, we went through there in 1984 with 3 kids under 5 in the caravan, and they were just about to renovate it, whoever owned it then, for caravans. And I've just Googled it. I see that they've got caravan and camping going.
Yeah, they've got caravans.
Right on the water. It was spectacular, but we were able to have a look, but they weren't operating. But yeah, never been back since. But yeah. Fascinating to have a look around, but you couldn't stay in 84.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing place. Okay.
I believe he was a bit annoyed about losing the Gaudi cigar familiar in Barcelona. That's why he came to Australia. It's a joke.
I don't know.
It's a joke.
Okay.
Impressive.
The big mistake he made, actually, in the building of it, was he thought he knew how to make his own cement. And I think he put too much lime into it or something. So a lot of the castle parts and the buildings are crumbling, and have been for quite a few years now. And but I don't know what the future of it will be. It's quite a popular tourist attraction the way it is, even though it's a little bit starting to crumble a bit. But great spot if you ever want to go, if you ever want to see something. Our next presentation, Gordon, is...
This is a chap I went to school with. Now got a good collection of Valiants.
To finish off tonight with a bit of older footage of Lobethal. Lobethal is a town in South Australia that actually was one of the first Australian Grand Prix, and they had a few meetings for a while. It was basically a circuit that went through the main street of the town, and quite a lot of the early races went there because there wasn't a lot of motor racing venues around in those days. In fact, I think Lobethal was definitely the only racetrack in those early days in South Australia. So you can have a look at this and see what you think. Thanks, Gordon.
In the glory Grand Prix days pre-war, as the might of Germany pitted supercharged Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union against Italy's thoroughbred Alfa Romeos, and motor racing reached peaks of enormous speed and power perhaps never again attained, in faraway Australia, there emerged arguably one of the greatest road racing circuits ever. Known as Lobethal, this was the longest circuit ever raced on in Australia. and begs comparison with Spa-Francorchamps of the same era. The same length, the same lap speeds for comparable cars, the same number of slow corners, more of the fast ones, and less straight road. But while Spa was part of a circle of tracks visited by professional teams in the course of their annual competition, Lobethal was a remote outpost visited by gentlemen participants in a sport in its infancy, a vestige of a time long past, a dream of an enthusiast and a creation of enthusiasm. 60,000 saw its one truly great race meeting in 1939, the Australian Grand Prix. There is no pretender to Lobethal's crown. When we look at the circuits that have seen racing in Australia, we might place Bathurst at the top of the list, or Phillip Island, or Nublar, or some other. But they're all on a different list to Lobethal. As a circuit, in its magnitude, in its mystery, and in its innocence, it stands alone. In 1966, when asked to name Australia's greatest circuit, Triple Australian Grand Prix winner Doug Whiteford answered emphatically and without hesitation, Lobethal. Rising from somebody's dream in 1937, Lobethal Township in the hills east of Adelaide was the focus of motor racing activity after the awakening brought about by the Centenary GP through Port Elliot and Victor Harbour the previous year. The originator of that dream may have been Claude Black, a local car dealer, or another local, Claude Minogue, who saw the benefits racing brought to the community at Victor Harbour. There had been hill climbs at Lobethal in 1936 and 1937, but these were on a metalled track out of town in the opposite direction to the circuit that was to come. When the movement to a race began, a company called Lobethal Carnivals Limited was formed by the town's business leaders and the Sporting Car Club of South Australia, together with the Motorcycle Club of South Australia, collaborated to make a reality of the first all-sealed road circuit in Australia. 8.65 miles of high-crowned bitumen roads wandered through the farmlands to converge on the pretty town of Lobethal, its heritage, German settlement in the late 1830s. Its backbone, the renowned Onkaparinga woolen mills. As a circuit, the roads, which were declared the racing circuit, were so dauntingly fast that, more than anywhere else in Australian racing history, they rewarded the ones who combined skill with bravery. Starting on from the Mount Torrens hairpin on straight, open road which preceded a humpbacked bridge followed by a curve, acceleration into a full lap of Lobethal was a commitment to unbridled speed and daring. On this first long, very fast leg of the circuit, roughly parallel to the railway and the Onkaparinga River, it was mostly flat and mostly flat out. There were just 6 or 7 gentle sweeps or kinks and the crowd at the hotel in Charleston to keep the drivers and riders interested as their rev counters bounced in the red for almost 3.5 miles. This euphoric blast was tamed by Kyani Corner, a sharp intersection that required good judgment before an accelerated rush downhill across the Onkaparinga River, then a climb to the brow of the hill overlooking the town. Here it got interesting as a sharp, blind brow led into the S's. Downhill S's that were tight enough to claim a lot of cars and provide plenty of spectators with a great view. The straight that led into town came from the last left-hander fairly level, but then the road simply dropped away. And as the hospital was passed, heavy braking was the order of the day as the T intersection with the main street was reached. The circuit then climbed again with a dip towards the end of the town centre before swinging right and beginning the roller coaster ride that sorted the men from the boys. It's this section that defies adequate description. 3 miles of ups and downs, of blind brows, of fast curves between the dairy farms that made Lobethal a legend. The Charleston section tested the engines. The run to town tested the brakes and handling, but like nowhere else in Australia, this stretch tested the commitment of the drivers. Oh, to have been there, perched in the paddock above the S's or on Schubert's farm, watching the faster cars fly through that stretch. On these downhill swoops, many cars reached higher speeds than they were capable of touching on the road to Cayenne. And just imagine the sensation through the township as the exhausts echoed from the shop fronts and Colin Dunn mounted the footpath to pass one slower car. Titled Lobethal Carnival Week, the first meeting from December 27th, 1937 to January the 3rd, 1938, opened with a tourist trophy program for motorcycles. The star attraction, German champion Ewald Kluge, did not disappoint, winning the 75-mile lightweight and junior crowns aboard his rotary valve 250cc supercharged two-stroke DKW. Local rider Les Fredericks rode to a team-ordered second place. Victorian ace Frank Musset on a Velocette held the lead until engine trouble saw him left standing on the road. Norton-mounted local stars Bruce Wren, 50-mile sidecar TT, and Clem Foster, 100-mile senior TT, took the unlimited capacity events. On their outfits, Wren and arch-rival Ron Badger waged a race-long battle. As the media of the day reported, down the Charleston Strait, the Badger-Wren duel resolved itself into a battle of sheer speed, each man reaching 95 miles per hour with his sidecar-burdened machine. Both drivers were giving sparkling exhibitions of furious driving, and the cornering was hair-raising. The breathtaking acrobatics of Wren's sidecar passenger occupied the attention of the crowd more than Wren's driving, skillful as it was. Wren eventually won by more than 200 yards in what was one of the great races ever staged around Lobethal's vast layout. His passenger was Barney Hughes. Badger was paired with Bob Moody on the thumping number 4 aerial square 4. In the senior TT, an unlucky George Hannaford on a 500 Velocette crashed at Cayenne and lay stunned until Clem Foster came through to take the lead and claim a handy £50 first prize. Remounting his battered machine, Hannaford, with 5 minutes lost, finished a distant second to Foster. Off the circuit, picture parties, banquets, dances, and a grand finale Biergarten amused all. But nothing quite matched the intrigue that surrounded the German team. Managed by Baron von Erzen, who was accompanied by his stunning wife and team interpreter Erna, it's held that the German visit, supposedly for cultural and sporting exchange, was as much about propaganda and espionage. And the presence of English car racer and charmer Alan Sinclair did little to diminish the mystery. He was reputedly an MI5 operative. His mission? To observe the Germans. His cover? To race at the same meetings. For Lobethal, he entered a supercharged Alta, one of 6 cars he brought to Australia. A full week after 20,000 spectators had attended the motorcycle meeting, special trains from Adelaide helped swell to 40,000 the car racing crowd. Spectators caught the train direct to the viewing areas at Cayenne Corner or the grandstands by the start-finish area at the Mount Torrens end for just 5 shillings return. Notices in the paper advised those driving of the best routes to take, and grandstand seats were 2 shillings and 4pence more than general admission. Programs sold for 6pence. The raw speed was what they wanted to see. And the Alta of Englishman Alan Sinclair was expected to provide it. But it was the K3 MGs that set the pace on what was our first completely sealed road circuit. K3 number 4 of Lister Jackson set the initial practice pace at around 6 minutes 56 seconds, eclipsed in the second session by Colin Dunn's K3 with a 6 minutes 36. By race day, the times were really tumbling, with Dunn setting 6 minutes 17 as the fastest lap. The legend had begun. A diminutive driver in a diminutive car, 25-year-old local Noel Campbell won the opening 100-mile South Australian Grand Prix in a Singer Bantam. Victorian Colin Dunn piloted MG K3 chassis 3030 to a gallant second place from locals Tony Ohlmeyer, MG, Giant Killer Ron Affrendell, Austin 7, and the 4-4 number 27 Morgan of Jim Borton from Melbourne. Potentially a danger-filled circuit, just 2 accidents marred the Grand Prix. On the descent to Mill Corner, Ash Malden, driving GP Sunbeam number 17, lost control, skidded wildly and mounted a bank. Soon afterwards, R.A. Lee Wright's car slewed off the road almost opposite. His passenger nearly fell from the car, and a photographer who'd just avoided the Sunbeam riot had to jump backwards into a blackberry bush to escape the careering terraplane. It was reported
another spectator who tore his clothing diving under a wire fence to avoid Lee Wright's car was loudly abused by his wife.
Narrow escapes occurred at the notorious Kiani Corner, many drivers adjusting to navigate the hapless number 22 Riley Brooklands of A. Ikin, which floundered for a time as its drivers struggled to get it moving again. The afternoon of the first motor race meeting saw an outstanding drive by what one reporter called the Symphony in Blue, as Colin Dunn, in overalls and helmet to match the blue racing colour of his ex-Prince Bira of Siam MGK3, took the 6-lap 50-mile handicap from Jim Borton's stripped 4-4 Morgan Roadster. AGP legend Les Murphy, on the number 20 MGP type, finished third, having the previous year won the Centenary Grand Prix at Victor Harbour. For the 1938-39 event, Lobethal became the first ever South Australian venue to be granted Australian TT motorcycle status, which, coupled with the Australian Grand Prix for cars, would make this an event of unprecedented national importance. In a packed TT field on Boxing Day 1938, Bruce Wren, now a Victorian resident, stamped his authority by winning the sidecar TT, albeit riding his big Norton with a broken arm. Arch rival Frank Pratt suffered engine failure and doggedly pushed his BMW machine across the line to claim 4th place behind R. Newman, Norton, and J. Conquest, Harley Davidson. Last-minute entry, Doug Booth from Western Australia won the stock machine handicap over 50 miles from Harry Hinton, BSA, and Frank Pratt, BMW. On the smaller capacity bikes, Harry Hinton's BSA gained the lightweight TT title, and Frank Mussett, Velocette, outperformed Victorian great George Hannaford and local favourite Clem Foster. The major event, the Australian Senior TT, was won narrowly by George Hannaford from UK star Dennis Minette, who rode Bruce Wren's 596 Norton to within inches of victory. Local Bruce Hector held third until running out of petrol on the last lap, and sadly, in this race, Lobethal's first fatality occurred at the notorious Schubert's Corner, when former South Australian George Wade crashed with fatal consequences. During the build-up to the Australian Grand Prix, amid the social activities, a soapbox derby attracted a further 2,000 spectators. Inviting entries from those whose cars were capable of 100 miles per hour, the 1939 Australian Grand Prix, to be run over 150 miles under international racing rules, was again organised by the Sporting Car Club in conjunction with Lobethal Carnivals Limited, with a final list of 65 nominations. All competitors were required to practice over 3 days and to complete at least 5 laps to the satisfaction of the event handicapping committee. with an ever more competitive bunch of cars. This was to be the fastest road race run in Australia in the pre-war years, despite a shortage of suitable tyres for the sustained high speeds. The entry list included several recently imported cars, chief among them the Alfa Romeo P3 2.9-litre monoposto with independent front suspension, twin tail shafts and 3-speed transmission. Victorian Alf Barrett, whose brother was Lord Mayor of Adelaide at the time, graduated from the Bullnose Morris Special he ran in 1938, both at Lobethal and in the 1938 Bathurst AGP, to a superb 2.3-litre Alfa Monza, a car which had Brooklands history and a top speed of more than 135 miles per hour. And it cost Barrett a mere 950 lira. John Snow, who'd imported the ex-Prince Bira MGK3 of Colindale in 1936, arrived at Lobethal with a Delahaye Type 135. Snow purchased it on a visit to England, during which he was married, achieved 4th place at Antwerp Grand Prix, and became a member of the British Racing Drivers Club. Snow also imported another Lobethal entry, an ex-Le Mans long chassis Alpha 8C2300, to be driven by John Crouch. The MGK3s of Dunn and Jackson were again entered, but neither started after practice problems. Jim Gullen entered a 5-litre Ballo, which threw a rod, and did not compete. And mystery man Alan Sinclair of the UK was unable to get his supercharged Sunbeam Special to the line. On race day, January 2nd, 1939, some 60,000 spectators saw fierce racing. First event, the 75-mile SA Junior Grand Prix, was won by the irrepressible Ron Uffendell in his tiny Austin 7. Bob Lee Wright took second in his Terraplane, and multiple AGP winner Les Murphy finished 3rd in the J.O. Day-entered MGP type, ahead of Victorian regular Jack Phillips of Wangaratta in his well-known 2-tone Ford V8 Special. At 1 p.m, in sweltering conditions, Event 2, the stock car race, saw Tom Brady and the car's owner, Charlie Shepherd, take the honours in a Singer Bantam number 45. Legend has it that Brady had told his wife he was part of a support crew at Lobethal. Jock McKinnon was second in his Ford V8. Ted Parsons drove a J.K. Phillips-entered Ford V8, and fastest man, G. Brownsworth, lapped his SS100 Jaguar in 7 minutes, 29 seconds. With £200 and the Advertiser's Silver Trophy for the winner, the last Australian Grand Prix prior to World War II saw South Australian Russell Bowes hold an early lead from Vern Leach, both MG mounted. Sadly, Leach was fatally injured late in the race when he crashed near Gumaraka Corner, and Bowes was a casualty of the war which followed. Others in the placings early on were Jim Borton in the now single-seater Morgan 4.4, upgraded from its 1938 stripped sports format, Kerr Lewis, who had overturned his car in the morning race, and the bigger engine cars of Lee Wright, Jack Phillips and Les Burrows. Manser, who handed the car over to Lister Jackson and Joshua in his sleek Fraser Nash, jumped ahead of number 31, J.W. Wilson, and on the 4th circuit, Tomlinson, the results of his extensive study of the circuit over the 3 weeks preceding the event beginning to show, passed Bowes to get onto the same lap. At lap 5, the order was still Bowes, Leach, Kerr Lewis, Borton, Lee Wright, Phillips and Burrows. Tomlinson was moving up. Kleinig retired after repeated excursions into the sandbags, and Alan Sinclair took over the wheel of Dr. Downing's Riley for another 2 laps. The Alphas of Crouch, Sawell and Barrett struggled to gain ground. Although incredibly fast on the long straights, Sawell in particular was found searching for gears at Cayenne and needed a restart after a prolonged stoppage at Mill Corner. Barrett, who stalled at the start, lost time at Kiani, again sandbagged. And tyres for the big fast cars were a constant issue in the extreme conditions. Barrett, regarded by many as one of Australia's finest ever drivers, did, however, set fastest time with a lap of 5 minutes 40 seconds. Late in the race, Tomlinson moved past Lee Wright on lap 13. Snow's Delahaye made up ground passing Burrows' number 17 Hudson, but the podium placings were set with 22-year-old Tomlinson achieving one of the finest ever AGP victories at an average of just under 80 miles an hour from veterans Lee Wright and Phillips. Saywell, Crouch and Barrett took 6th, 7th and 8th placings in what had been an amazing race, won by a highly skilled and well-prepared Western Australian, who was later asked to explain his success to none other than MG company owner Lord Nuffield. To give some insight into the young Tomlinson's amazing win, he returned to Lobethal to recollect his glory days of 70 years prior in an AGP result which, for the lap times alone, have staggered experts thereafter. But nobody there that day in 1939 questioned either the times or Tomlinson's bravery, nor Barrett's or Kleinig's or Saywell's, as they demonstrated what could be done with the right car. Lobethal hosted bike races at the close of 1939, and cars competed only one last time in 1940 before war intervened. In 1948, a combined car and bike event was Lobethal's last before public pressure brought about the demise of road racing. Today, more than 60 years after its last lap was completed in anger, the Lobethal circuit remains intact in the Adelaide Hills. The envy of every place any racing car has ever been driven or any motorcycle ridden. The dream of anyone who's been there. In 2008, the efforts of a dedicated band of enthusiasts saw a return to this circuit of circuits as the Lobethal Grand Carnival paid tribute to a time and a place, and to those who dared.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all we have for you tonight. A bit different.
Kerry, I just noticed very
Yes,
start
right.
on the first program, there was a T. Bar Smith as one of the organisers.
Yes, yes.
That too, which
Tom
would be...
Bar Smith, yep.
Well,
That's Tom. That's his father, I think.
Well, it'd be too early, but just a coincidence.
Yeah. And that actually, that film was put together and collated by Tony Parkinson from the Sporting Car Club in South Australia, who is also a Healey owner, and has his son put together with his son. His son is very keen on doing that sort of thing and producing. I don't know whether any of you would have seen the film that his son made when Tony had the 100S in South Australia. He did a fantastic shot of driving it through the hills in Adelaide, and it's probably still on YouTube, I would think, if you wanted to find it. It was really good. Okay, we can unmute everyone if you want to. Anyone wants to ask any questions or have a chat or anything. That's the end of our program tonight, and our next Zoom, of course, will be our December meeting, and we're working on it. Hopefully, Bill might be able to resurrect his prize interview with Jim Richards, and I've also, Bill, you don't know about this, but I've spoken to Eric Patterson, and I've got the grandson on the job again, and I'm writing him a script for an interview I want him to try and do. I can't tell you who with it. That's this stage. It's top secret, but he's he's interested in doing it. He thought that was fan, and we all thought he did a fantastic job interviewing Eric, and so I've thrown the challenge out to him to do another interview with another member of the Geelong fraternity down there. So we'll see what comes up. I can't say I'll see you at Sandown on Sunday because you can't go. No spectators. Hopefully it'll all go off well, and we shall see what the regulations are for the next MSCA event, which is at Phillip Island in December. Feel free to talk if you want to. Otherwise, thank you for joining us.
Terry,
yes.
I was just going to tell everyone that Terry got onto a restoration company over in South Australia called Finches, and we're all set to do a roam around their workshop. It's quite extensive, but you wouldn't believe it. It's just been a luckless week for me. They've got a COVID shutdown in South Australia, so we couldn't even do that tonight, and we'd set it up to do it tonight, but unfortunately, so we'll probably do that one as well, Terry.
Yep. Yes, we will pursue that one. We shall look forward to seeing you all at the December meeting. Thank you, Gordon, once again for your work, and thank you everyone for
Thanks, Gordon.
joining in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Casey.
And I like the background on John Maxwell's there, number 35. It's a beauty. Too bad, eh? All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, Bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you, Bill.
Good night, Casey.
Night.
Night,
Good
everyone.
night, all.
All right. Cheers.
Good night.